Mark, thank you. The final pretrial hearing in the sexual assault case against film producer Harvey Weinstein has ended for the day. Attorneys in New York spent the morning making final plans for the trial, which begins tomorrow with jury selection. His defense asked that the jury be sequestered, but was denied by the judge. Weinstein's accused of 5 felony counts by 2 women accusing him of sexual assault. Since the allegations came out more than 2 years ago, dozens of women have come forward. Some spoke ahead of today's hearing.
Living in silence is a death sentence to your soul, because when you get killed by being raped, you carry around that dead person inside of you until you can find a way to birth it. And for me, birthing that was through using my voice.
67-year-old Weinstein could get up to life in prison if convicted as charged.
Joining us now is criminal defense and civil rights attorney Brian Claypool.
He's here with his insight about jury selection and some challenging aspects of this trial for both the prosecution and the defense. Good morning. Good to have you.
Good morning. Thanks.
So this trial will focus on just 2 of the 80 women who've accused Weinstein of sexual misconduct. What are the obstacles facing prosecutors and defense attorneys when it comes to how they'll question and evaluate potential jurors?
Well, the rubber is finally meeting the road in this first massive Me Too movement trial. And I believe one of the most important parts of the trial is going to be jury selection. There's been so much massive pretrial publicity. Even last night at the Golden Globes, they're talking about Weinstein. So his lawyers have a daunting task to make sure he gets fair and open-minded jurors. That's the purpose of jury selection. And I believe...
Let's talk about that for just a second. I mean, because jury selection is such an important part, maybe the most important part and most overlooked part of winning a trial. Is it necessary that each juror not have heard about Harvey? I mean, do they have to? Because you're right, it's pervasive, the amount of information, all the news stories. I mean, how much do they have to know, or how little do they have to have heard about it in order for them to be seated on the jury?
It's a great question. I actually did the Dahlia DiPolito trial in Palm Beach, Florida. It was a internationally followed case where she was on tape saying, I want my husband killed. In that case, we were able to convince the judge to have jurors question individually to make sure that the pretrial publicity doesn't taint their judgment in the case. So if a juror, for example, says, yes, I've heard about Weinstein, I've heard about people saying he's a predator, the next question would be then, would that affect your ability to be fair and unbiased in the trial? And you've got to be able to question these jurors, though, separately so they don't clam up or embellish in front of all the other jurors.
When talking about the trial, prosecutors added predatory to the sexual assault charges. How did they plan to prove that?
The judge has allowed one of the actresses who claimed that she was sexually assaulted to come in and testify as well that she was sexually assaulted by Harvey Weinstein in the same manner that the 2 other victims have. That, in my opinion, is really going to make it hard for Weinstein's defense. That if she's able to come in and testify that meets the burden to have what's called predatory sexual assault. Why is that important? Because Weinstein could potentially face life in prison then if convicted.
Weinstein's defense wanted to call a New York police detective, but the judge ruled that they can't call that particular detective. What happened with that, and why is that important?
Yeah, one of the detectives told one of the witnesses to delete messages that she had sent to Weinstein back and forth. Now, Weinstein's lawyers wanted that to come in because they want to then argue to the jury, oh, look at these victims that are trying to cover up what happened and to show that they were trying to frame Harvey Weinstein. So that is a blow for Weinstein's team. And another problem Weinstein's team is going to have is 3 other alleged victims are going to be able to testify as to what's called prior bad acts. Typically in a criminal trial, you can't get in evidence of prior bad acts. It's too prejudicial for the jury. But here the judge is allowing 3 other women to come in and testify. So that's going to be really, really hard for Weinstein's defense to overcome.
Quick question. We saw him walking in today with a walker. What did you think of that? I mean...
Yeah, he's trying to play the sympathy card, and I personally think he should stop doing that. In fact, his lawyers, I think, have had bad client control. One of his lawyers gave a interview on Nightline, and she was actually talking about how the victims made bad choices. Why did you go into that hotel room? That's also potentially damaging because it's demonizing the victims. And one other point I want to make, talking about this Walker, hey, if he's having trouble walking into the courtroom, he better think about possibly getting a little bit stronger to testify at trial. Because
Do you think he will?
Well, whether he will or whether he should are two great questions. Right. Whether he will, I don't think so. Whether he should, absolutely. Because his sole defense is that these women consented. How do you prove consent? If he doesn't come in and say, hey, these women all consented, what evidence does his team have to prove that they consented?
All right,
Thank
Brian,
you so
thanks
much.
for coming in this morning. Brian Claypool, criminal defense and civil rights attorney with law offices in Pasadena. For more information, you can go to his website or follow him on Twitter.
Thank you so much. All right.